Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the press conference. As everybody is getting situated, I want to let you know that we are recording the event, so please keep yourself on mute until you are acknowledged to speak. And we will be beginning with presentations on our key priority bills for the 2021 session, and then we will have time for Q&A and discussion. What's great is that we have even more legislators who are planning to join us that aren't even on the agenda, so we may be able to hear from them during the discussion portion as well. So we will let everyone get situated and we'll start in about a minute. So thank you all for joining us. All right, well, we have hit 100 people in the room with more coming in. So this is a great representation of Virginians. We have some reporters with us and also our legislators. So thank you all so much for being here. I also want to thank Network Nova for hosting the event. Being the tech in the background is a lot of work, and I really appreciate their support. My name is Louisa Boyarski, and I am the leader of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. 2020 was a very challenging year for all of us, and as we embark on 2021, we must ensure that Virginia is prepared to face the upcoming challenges, whether they be the COVID-19 pandemic, systemic racism, or the existential threat of climate change, to name a few. Along with our legislators today, we are calling upon the Virginia General Assembly to take action on 4 legislative priorities: promoting fairness and transparency in our elections and politics, creating environmentally healthy communities and protecting against the impact of climate change, making Virginia safer and healthier for all, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, promoting equity, support our workforce, and advancing the rights of all Virginia residents. The Virginia Grassroots Coalition, which includes more than 50 grassroots groups and represents more than 10,000 Virginia voters, has reviewed and prioritized legislative bills that most critically need to be passed this year. We are pleased to share some of these bills with you today. These bills, however, are only a few examples of the important legislation that we hope will be passed during the 2021 General Assembly session. I want to thank all of our members for their tireless work to advocate for these legislative priorities, and I'd like to urge our legislators to take seriously our call to action. So next, I would like to introduce Marianne Burke, who is a member of the coalition and leader of Indivisible Virginia 11, to speak about the national popular vote. Marianne?
Thank you, Louisa, and welcome everyone. It's my pleasure today to introduce Delegate Mark Levine, who is delegate for the House District 45 in Alexandria, Virginia. He's the chief patron of the House of Delegates bill on the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. And that number is HB 1933, and there's an identical bill in the Senate, SB 1101, and that's important because we have a short session this time, so we need to get them both through. By way of introduction, the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is a way that Virginia can help us get to one person, one vote and across the country. Many agree that the Electoral College method of electing the president has disadvantages. Twice in this century, the candidate who won the presidential election based on the electoral vote got fewer popular votes than the challenger due to the way the electoral votes are allocated to states. And that, as you probably know, were George Bush and Donald Trump. The battleground states get much more attention from candidates than do the states that are reliably red or blue, which is not fair. And reliance on the Electoral College to pick the president is part of the Constitution. So short of amending the Constitution, we have limited options. Delegate Levine will now tell you how his bill will bring Virginia in line with the growing number of states that have joined the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. And that will bring us to one person, one vote, while still employing the Electoral College. Delegate Levine.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, Louisa. Thank you to this massive crowd here I see in my Zoom room. I think it's about time America become a democracy. In a democracy, all people get one vote and get one equal vote. Actually, our Declaration of Independence said that all men are created equal. Thomas Jefferson didn't include women, and he certainly didn't include enslaved persons. But I think it's time that everyone is included in America. The original Electoral College, which James Madison complained was done when everyone was tired on the last day, was set up basically on the basic of some clear foundational principles. One, the United States of America would never have political parties. Two, slaveholders deserve 1 3/5 votes, while enslaved persons deserve none. Three, a bunch of wise white men with property would choose the president of the United States, not based on party advantage, but based on their wisdom. And the people would know who their electors were and choose them. And fourth, that there would never be a winner-take-all system. Each elector would consider it. Basically, all the principles that set up the Electoral College are absolutely wrong, outdated, archaic, out the window. And as Marianne mentioned, we would not have the current president of the United States right now if it were not for the Electoral College. I think it's time that the American people choose the American president. And the people of the United States should choose the president of the United States. And to do that, every person gets one vote. It doesn't make sense that if we move somewhere in America, suddenly our votes count 4 times as much. And it really doesn't make sense that 6 or 7 states choose the president every year. We know who it was, right? It was Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada. And for the rest of us, our votes honestly didn't matter that much. We're trying to get people to vote. And if they say, well, I'm from a blue place, I'm from a red place, my vote doesn't matter, how do we admit to folks that that's kind of true? It matters in local races and down ballot races. So it's critical to do it. The way to do it is the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. We already have states and the District of Columbia totaling 196 electoral votes in that compact. Virginia would add 13 and put us at 209, only 61 votes away. If we get to 270, what it does is the states in the compact cast all their electoral votes for the winner of the national popular vote. And then we don't have these very close elections where a few things depend on one state or 2 states. The last elections, there's been millions of votes. And frankly, as progressives, the majority of this country are progressive. It's time that the majority of this country get their vote. So please help me. HB 1933, it was HB 177. I introduced it last year. It made it through the House of Delegates. The Senate said, well, it's too close to the election 2020, so we can't do it then, but they can definitely do it this year. And I really need your help to lobby, particularly the Senate. You should lobby the House and the Senate, but particularly the Senate to get it through. And finally, we can get rid of this outdated, archaic, really dangerous, undemocratic system. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate Levine. We appreciate your leadership on this really important topic. We've been talking a lot this past year about voter access, but this is such a critical, fundamental piece of that at the national level. So thank you so much. All right, we are now going to move on to our next presentation. So I would like to introduce Kristina Hagen, a member of the coalition and director of the Virginia Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy. Kristina?
Thank you, Louisa. And I just want to say first a quick thank you to you on behalf of the Grassroots Coalition, and also to Network Nova for organizing such a great event today. As you said, my name is Kristina Hagen. I'm the campaign director for the Campaign for a Family-Friendly Economy, Virginia. Our mission as an organization is to fight for smart economic policies that lift Virginia families and make our communities stronger. We're really excited this year to be partnering with Senator Jennifer Boysko again as our chief patron in the Senate, and Delegate Hala Ayala as our chief patron in the House on paid family medical leave, establishing a program here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I know we have a number of great supporters and allies and co-patrons here on the line, so big thank you to all of you for your support. But if it's all right, I'd like to go ahead and kick it over to Senator Boysko to speak to the bill. in the Senate. I think I have seen it drop in the House already. We're looking at HB 2016. I don't know that I've seen a bill number just yet in the Senate, but over to you, Senator Boysko, to talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you so much, Kristina. It's great to be with everybody today. I know that all of us care about economic equality and fairness in Virginia, and we are all fighting the good fight. The Paid Family and Medical Leave Bill is an insurance program that would be run through Virginia for all workers for catastrophic and serious illness or need to take care of another person. So instead of sick leave, which is the flu, we're talking about cancer. We're talking about caring for someone who has just had a baby or brought a new baby into their family, someone who is dealing with a death of a family member, things that are life-changing and really make it very difficult for an individual to continue to work while taking care of themselves or their loved ones. There's a difference between the two, and it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are understanding the differences. Right now, the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act is the only permanent national leave policy, and it only covers unpaid leave for some people. We are the only country of basically in the industrialized world that doesn't guarantee paid leave for everyone, and we want to change that. Here in Virginia, 55% of our working adults are either not eligible for the unpaid leave that is offered to them, or they can't afford to take unpaid leave from work. We need this in Virginia. So we believe that paid family and medical leave is the solution to this challenge. When people who are working have the flexibility to meet their most important responsibilities, then they're more productive at their jobs. And that's better for the business's bottom lines, and it's good for the economy. And of course, with the COVID crisis, this is more important than ever. You know, we know that it is absolutely instrumental that people who are dealing with the pandemic and are sick should have the ability to keep their jobs and rest at home safely away from other people. Because as you know, we just lost a dear member of our Senate to COVID just a week ago. But we know that it's really the people who are the low wage workers who are the most affected by not having a policy of paid family and medical leave. The people who are the least likely to afford to take unpaid leave are the ones who don't have the access to it. And we're trying to change that. Over 4% of the lowest wage workers, only 4% of the lowest wage workers actually have access to paid family and medical leave. And those who are living paycheck to paycheck are unable to make those decisions for themselves. And they sometimes have to make decisions of, do I keep my job or do I go to work and ignore my responsibility at home or my own health? It's not fair. We know that historically, this is affecting brown and Black families in Virginia and nationwide. The majority of our Latinx and Black workers are unable to take unpaid leave because either they aren't eligible for it in their jobs or because they can't afford it. These structural discriminatory barriers prevent families of colors from being able to afford time off to care for themselves or for their loved ones, which puts their health and economic well-being in jeopardy.
Thank you so much, Senator. We need to move on to our next topic, even though all of these are so important. If you have more information about the bill, we have at least one question in the chat, but we'll also get to that during the Q&A section.
I'm just very passionate about it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for championing the bill again this year.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I now would like to introduce Susan Murphy, who is a member of the coalition and the leader of Welcoming Immigrant Neighbors of NOVA, to speak about paid sick leave. So you'll see that these are two related but different bills that are really important to be passing this year. Susan.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Louisa. And it's a pleasure being here with all of you today. Delegate Elizabeth Guzman represents the 31st District of the Virginia House of Delegates. She has worked on the issue of paid sick days since she joined the House in 2018 and was a key legislator in securing driver privilege cards for undocumented Virginians during the 2020 legislative session. During the 2021 legislative session, she will be introducing legislation to provide for paid sick days for essential workers and legislation that will provide undocumented Virginians with a non-driver identification privilege card. The reason this first bill is important to us here in Virginia is that Virginia has a very large amount of immigrants who are essential workers. They're doing low-paying jobs and they can't afford to take days off. If they get sick, they will go to work, which jeopardizes us, Virginians. We feel that it's necessary that we feel confident that essential workers will get sick. We want to feel confident that essential workers will get sick, who get sick will stay at home rather than go to work to cook, clean, serve food, etc., to and for us, especially in these days of COVID. With regard to the second bill, it is important that productive Virginians have IDs to do their multiple things, like open bank accounts, go on school trips, get library cards, go to community colleges, etc. We as Virginians want people to succeed and to be productive part of our community. And with that said, I would like to introduce Delegate Elizabeth Warren to discuss further these two bills.
Thank you, Susan, for the beautiful introduction. I am Delegate Elizabeth Guzman, and I represent the 31st District in the House of Delegates, which includes parts of Prince William and Fauquier counties. I'm a social worker, a public administrator, a second-generation union sister, an immigrant, a mother to 4 children, but most importantly, I'm a fighter for working people, marginalized communities, and progressive causes. And I'm so honored to be joining you today to briefly discuss these 2 top legislative priorities that are part of the legislative priorities as well for the House Democratic Caucus. So this legislation, the first legislation is the paid sick days that will provide essential workers 40 hours of paid leave that can be used to care for themselves or their families. The paid leave will be available for essential workers, and we consider essential workers, law enforcement officers, firefighters, emergency medical services personnel, educators and support staff, transportation workers, and those all defined in Executive Order 72, which includes grocery store workers, healthcare providers, long-term care workers, home care providers, food manufacturer and supplier workers, domestic workers, cleaning and security workers, prison and jail personnel. Including this legislation, we also have a hardship waiver that is small businesses with 25 or less employees can apply for if providing this benefit, and it would be detrimental to their continued operation. I'm proud, as Susan mentioned, that I have introduced this legislation for the past 3 years, and 8 out of 10 Virginians agree, including 96% of Democrats who support a paid sick leave policy, and more than 70% Republicans. So this is not a partisan issue. It's something that we should all be supporting. Immigrants make Virginia work, and they have been on the front lines of our pandemic response for the last year. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us how important it is for workers to get care they need to ensure our Commonwealth runs smoothly. The essential workers of Virginia deserve time off to go to the doctor. We have gotten information that essential workers are not showing up for their vaccination appointments because they can get a commitment from their employers to be compensated for getting the vaccine and being given the time to recover from side effects. The second bill is the no driver ID cards. Last year, we were able to pass legislation that provides driver's license to undocumented immigrants. But this year, I'm introducing legislation that will extend availability to individuals who are non-drivers in the form of identification privilege card. I believe that the dignity of an ID should be extended to everyone who calls Virginia home, regardless of whether they drive. An ID can be a barrier to getting a bank account, getting books out of the library, or registering a child for school. So as the first Latina immigrant elected to the Commonwealth, I will ask for your support. Let's continue this fight to make Virginia a place where diversity is embraced and not disrespected. Thank you so much. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Delegate Guzman. And just want to note that there have been some questions in the chat about bill numbers. So if any of you do have bill numbers or links to the bills on LIS, please put them in the chat so that people who are attending will have access to them. I now would like to introduce Francesca Constantino, who leads the coalition's working group on food and agriculture. Francesca.
Francesca, you're on mute. Rookie mistake. Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here to hear about the progressive legislation you can support this session. Here's why this bill in the food and agriculture sector is important. Supply chain disruptions due to the COVID-19 pandemic showed us the importance of strong local food systems. Industrial agriculture through monoculture, concentrated animal feeding, and consolidation of land and ownership erodes soils, pollutes waters, and is destroying the family farm and our rural economies. On the other hand, local food systems of small and mid-sized farms using regenerative agricultural practices contribute to economic development and jobs, as well as resilience and sustainability, while increasing food access for the good health and nutrition of our communities. Supporting farms and community development and stabilizing our climate are nonpartisan issues. Progressives need to do more for rural areas. That means going beyond a rural plan or farm photo op to champion policy and programs that really benefit rural communities. We can do this by supporting this legislative proposal that invests in community food and farm infrastructure to address climate change, build a resilient, sustainable local food system, and revitalize rural communities. This proposal was developed by farmers and advocates working with legislators under the Green New Deal Coalition. The lead patron, Delegate Sam Rasul of Roanoke, will now tell you more about the bill and why it is important and urgent for Virginians.
Well, thank you and good afternoon, Francesca. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction of the bill and for all of your great work and to show just how intersectional a lot of these things are. Yay to the Grassroots Coalition for having such a force. This is probably going to be the probably most attended press conference of the session. It looks like you've got 150 strong, so you are really flexing. I hope people are paying attention to this force that is the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. We are proud of your leadership. Thank you, Louisa. Thank you to so many of you who are bringing so many folks together. You know, as we think about some of these issues, what's powerful about your coalition is that many of them are intersectional. And we tend to think about and talk in the silos, but as we dig down deeper, we realize things like agriculture. A lot of us are worried about our local food, our health, trying to think about how we can find innovative ways of approaching agriculture. For example, there's a great film that you can watch called Kiss the Ground, which just came out, which really opened my eyes to really realizing how much we can be doing in sequestering carbon through changing the ways we approach agriculture. Imagine here in Virginia, we could try to think of innovative ways to support what's called regenerative agriculture, where we sequester carbon, which is a huge piece of the pie here. We help local farmers. We bring more nutritious and local food to you. I mean, who doesn't like to go to a local farmer's market or get local goods right at your local store there? This is an important piece. And that's how I come and we go to places like Fairfax and say, hey, here's how we can think about agricultural issues that you actually really do care about in climate change and healthy food. So with this bill that is before us, local food and farming infrastructure bill, which is in the process of getting its number, should be out in about an hour or two. what that will do is expand across one program that we have called the APHID program here in Virginia, to allow for the application of grants to have local farmers band together and invest in processing facilities where they can achieve some certain economies of scale. So some of these smaller local farmers, may not be able to go out and buy some of that larger capital equipment, but if they band together and through these grants in their locality, they'll be able to do some of that work. So thank you so much to the Grassroots Coalition for all the wonderful work that you're doing and for including a lot of these intersectional issues as we move forward.
Thank you so much, Delegate Rasool, for joining us and for helping lead the Green New Deal work here in Virginia. So I next would like to introduce Sharon Shetler, who leads the Coalition's working group on clean energy and climate. Sharon.
Hi, everybody. I was going to be introducing Lamont Bagby, the delegate who is the chief patron of this bill, but I just got notice from his LA that an emergency has come up and he will not be joining us. So I'm going to talk about the bill instead. I'm very excited about this bill that the delegate is chief patron for. In a nutshell, it's going to make more electric vehicles available to Virginians. It will reduce carbon emissions and it will improve the health of the most vulnerable in our communities. And frankly, how many bills can do that at the same time? I think we all know that climate change represents an existential threat to the Commonwealth, and we know it's imperative to reduce carbon dioxide emissions now to stave off the worst from climate change. But I bet most of you didn't know that transportation actually accounts for 48% of all CO2 emissions in the state, and of that, nearly 37% of those emissions come from personal vehicles. So this bill is an important bill, and what it will do is it will provide more, let's start with choice. It provides more vehicle choice to Virginians. This bill will require manufacturers to sell 8% of their zero emission vehicles in Virginia, beginning with model year 2025. And we need those vehicles. Virginia wants those vehicles. We can't meet the projected demand for EVs unless we actually pass the clean car standards. Why? Because the manufacturers sell almost all their EVs to the 14 states and the District of Columbia that have already passed clean car standards. We as Virginians get the leftovers. Next year, Ford is going to be introducing the electric F-150 truck, the electric Mustang Mach SUV. VW is going to be introducing a new electric SUV, and the Jeep rolls out its electric Wrangler. These are just a few of the vehicles we want Virginians to be able to have the right to buy right here in Virginia. They shouldn't have to go to Maryland, DC, or another clean car state to buy an EV. Between the time this bill passes and the time it goes into effect, nearly 3 years from now, we'll be increasing charging stations and work to provide mechanisms for EV rebates to consumers. Importantly, the rebates will be higher for low-income consumers. We want EVs to be more affordable for all. And if Virginia joins the growing number of clean car states, we get access to cheaper vehicles that are only sold in clean car states like Fiat and some other models. Importantly, though, this bill will improve the health of the most vulnerable in the Commonwealth. Carbon dioxides not only contribute, as I mentioned, to climate change, but these pollutants that come from vehicles make people sick. And in Richmond, Virginia, which is the the delegate's district, people suffer for some of the highest asthma rates in the entire country. The American Lung Association, Harvard School of Public Health, Virginia Clinicians for Climate Action tell us that pollutants from vehicles disproportionately harm low-income communities and communities of color. We know that people of color are 3 times more likely to live in a county with failing grades for unhealthy ozone days, particulate pollutions, and annual particulate levels. Car pollution is frankly lethal. In Virginia, 750 people die prematurely every year from transportation emissions, roughly the same number as die from traffic accidents. Clean car standards will reduce harmful emissions and make people healthier. And as I mentioned earlier, it will help us mitigate the worst of climate change. The General Assembly must now address transportation. It addressed the electric utility sector last year, and now we must address transportation, a sector that is responsible for nearly half of the CO2 emissions in our states. Let's get busy. Let's support consumer choice. Let's support the health of the most vulnerable. Let's help the climate. We need to pass this bill now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sharon, and thank you for filling in as needed at the press conference. Again, this is one of the priority bills that we're really excited to get behind this session. So thank you so much, and thank you to the delegate for supporting it. So I would now like to say, in introduction to our last topic, over the past 4 years, we've learned how much influence campaign donations have in preventing some of the most critical legislation from being passed. I'd like to introduce Nancy Morgan and Matt Royer, members of the coalition, to speak about the importance of campaign finance reform. And I'll note we're very lucky that we have multiple bills that will be focusing on it this year. So thank you so much, two of you. Handing it over to Nancy.
Thank you, Louisa, and hi, everybody. I'm the Virginia coordinator for the Virginia chapter of American Promise, which is a group working on getting money out of politics. And why is it important to get money out of politics? Well, I think that my delegate, Mark Levine, said it in the very first session. It's time that America become a democracy. And I think that we all agree that money is drowning out all of our voices. So it's exciting, even with this short session, there's quite a few interesting bills being introduced. And this is particularly relevant for Virginia because we're one of 5 states, soon to be 4, that has no limitations on campaign finance. So let's do a kudo to Senator Marcus Simon, who's introducing a bill. Yet the number should be released soon to restrict personal uses of campaign finance contribution. I think we all agree that legislators shouldn't be able to spend their money on vacations, investment, and school tuition. So also, given the challenges in getting bills passed, hats off to Delegate David Bulova, who is proposing a study on campaign finance. So if bills don't get through, it will set us up in the beginning of the 2022 General Assembly for a broad agreement on a legislative package on what is comprehensive campaign finance reform. And our group is particularly excited that this year we hope to have Virginia join 21 other states to support overturning Citizens United. And 2 wonderful Virginia legislators, Senator Cray Deeds and Mike Mullins in the House, will be championing a state resolution that proposes an amendment to the Constitution which will allow Congress and the states yet again to do due diligence in terms of regulating election spending. And you guys out there, I think you know 75% of Americans, irrespective of party, this is not Democrat versus Republican support, and 85% of business executives agree that our campaign finance system is broken. And we're also excited because January 21st is the 11th anniversary of Citizens United. So if we could get a resolution passed this in January, that would make we would become the 22nd state. So if you're interested, join us. We need advocacy. Check out our website, Virginia Money Out of Politics. And I'm going to turn over the proverbial microphone to Matt Royer, who will introduce our next wonderful speaker, who has an interesting bill, which will be championed also by Chap Peterson in the Senate, we hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. My name is Matt Royer. I am the co-chair of the Virginia Justice Democrats. There is a cancer that is deep-seated within our legislature here in Virginia, and that is the influence of corporations, in particular publicly regulated utilities that have bought their way into the Virginia state government. Due to our lax campaign finance laws that Nancy just described, corporations like Dominion Energy have ingrained themselves into our political arena, buying out both Republican and Democratic delegates, state senators, and even governors by creating campaign financing system that makes them bow to their corporation's will in order to ensure their reelection. We have seen the hand that Dominion and other entities have played when it comes to legislation, and their fingerprints remain all over our legislative process. It is the mission of the Virginia Justice Democrats to eliminate the corporate influence on our state legislature, and that starts with an outright ban of campaign donations from publicly regulated utilities. That is why we are pleased to support Delegate Ibrahim Samira's bill, HB 1756, in order to prohibit such campaign donations. And now I invite the patron of this bill, Delegate Samira, to explain further.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you to the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. Nice to see so many familiar faces on this afternoon, and exciting session coming up that will be dealing a lot of issues head on, as you've heard today, from the environment to our democracy. And I come to you with sort of a combination of not just the fight for the environment, not just a fight for our democracy, but also for our access to public goods overall, things like broadband that are desperately needed today. So I think we should start off with talking about the major happening of the hour. There's an assault on our democracy that we witnessed last week, and there's an urgency to protect it, to protect its core from future attacks. And there's companies that provide public goods like broadband and electricity that have harmed our public interest through their giving to legislators all across the board in Virginia, as well as governors, attorney generals, lieutenant governors, everybody. And their PAC giving has influenced these decisions of these government officials to harm to the harm of the public. Things like our carbon pollution footprint is negatively impacted by contributions from Dominion Energy to all sorts of officials all across Virginia. Giving by telecom companies has harmed our ability to expand broadband access to as many Virginians that need it as possible in the middle of this pandemic that requires people to buckle up and stay at home to stay away from the virus and keep their families safe. So that's why I'm introducing HB 1756. It does have a number. I introduced it very early. The amended HB 1756 would seek to prevent public service corporations and their PACs from contributing to candidates in Virginia. No more unfair advantages for these pseudo monopolies at the expense of the people. It's no secret that for that to happen, it must come from the ground up. That's why I'm excited to work with you all as organizers across Virginia to make sure that the bill passes. There is action. There's an Action Network link that I believe Matt would be passing around, as well as involvement from national groups through the American Promise, I believe, to do a big campaign to push this, and would love all the involvement. We believe that the bill can pass the House, and we look forward to Delegate Marcus Simon giving it a hearing and giving it a vote in subcommittee and committee, the new committee that he chairs. And thank you so much. Passing it back.
Thank you so much, Delegate Samira. And I think it's very important that we have these votes so that we can hold our legislators accountable when it comes to elections this coming year, or this year, actually, for the House. So I want to say that our previous speakers have made the case that we still have a lot of work to do in Virginia. We call upon our legislators to pass legislation that serves the interests of all Virginians, not just those with the greatest access or the loudest voice. The Virginia Grassroots Coalition is committed to holding our legislators accountable to their campaign promises, and we will be following up this press conference with a letter to our legislators that outlines all of the priority bills that we hope will be passed this year. We are now going to move shortly into our Q&A section. So if you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat or raise your hand. But I do see that we have Senator Jennifer McClellan in with us, and she would like to highlight one of her bills that she is focusing on this session that aligns with one of our important priorities, focusing on the pipelines. Senator McClellan.
Thank you. Thank you, Louisa, and thank you, everyone. First, I just want to say thank you to the Grassroots Coalition for everything that you have done up to now. We made tremendous progress in the 2020 General Assembly. We didn't really have a whole lot of time to celebrate that progress, but a lot of that work was because of you, because of your advocacy, because of your doggedness and your determination. And so I just want to start by saying thank you, but keep it up, because as we have seen, democracy is not a spectator sport, and we are a government by, of, and for the people. That means that the product of that government is only as good as the people who participate. And you are making sure that more and more voices are participating, not just for elections, but in the halls of power as we make policy. So I want to very briefly talk about a bill that I have been working on with the Sierra Club to address what's happening with our pipelines. And in 2017, when the initial permits were issued, a lot of advocates, a lot of the communities that were going to be impacted warned what could happen, warned that these pipelines would have a detrimental impact on our communities, on our air, and on our water. And over time, particularly the Mountain Valley Pipeline, they've changed their plans. They've changed their construction projects, and yet the state has not had the ability or the authority to go back and review those projects, review any permits, and in some cases revoke those permits. And so I am proud to introduce a bill that I have worked with the Sierra Club and the Southern Environmental Law Center that would fix that problem. So currently, once the Water Board certifies projects under the Clean Water Act, that's all based on information provided at the time of the application. Over time, if there are any changes at all, this would require renewed reviews and accountability. It would also make sure that the Commonwealth sees those changes, because right now those changes are made, the Commonwealth never sees them. FERC may see them, FERC may approve them, but once the Commonwealth does an initial review, nothing ever happens at the state level. So this is going to ensure that to the extent that there are those changes, the state has a role to play in ensuring we are protecting our water and air. And so that bill, it has been filed, but it does not have a bill number yet. Hopefully within the next couple of days, it will have a bill number, and I'll make sure that you all get it as quickly as possible. But again, the Sierra Club is coordinating efforts around that, and then we'll make sure that you all have as much information as quickly as possible.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for championing, putting your support behind the bill. It's so important. And for a while, we felt like there wasn't as much attention to the pipeline. So we really, really appreciate your leadership this year. So I wanted to quickly see if Delegate Keem wanted to say anything. I noticed that he is in the room. And if not, I'm going to open it up for Q&A. So please feel free to either raise your hand and, oh, Delegate Keem, there he is.
I just want to say, well, no, I wasn't planning on speaking. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put on this tie, right? No, I'm just kidding. It's so good to see all of you. Happy New Year. Thank you all for doing what you're doing. It's great to join my colleagues. Look forward to a very exciting and productive and somewhat short and virtual session. But the main thing is your agenda is our agenda. And the reason why your agenda is our agenda is because you made that your agenda and our agenda. Thanks to the work that you did up to the election. Now it's our turn to take the lead from the election on to make sure that we deliver on what you've done. So thank you. I look forward to working with all my colleagues to get every one of these bills into law this year, and keep it up.
Great. Thank you so much. And I've also been notified that Delegate Kay Corey is on with us. Kay, if you would like to say a couple of words, please unmute yourself. All right. Seeing none, we do have a question for Delegate Samira in the chat. Delegate Samira, the question is, are waste management providers covered in your bill? And there's some additional details from Katie if you need them for that question. make
Sorry,
sure
can you
you
repeat the question a little? Just can you quickly repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yes. So Katie wanted to know, are waste management providers covered in your bill? She says she lives in a district with 2 large landfills, both of which are over 50% out of state waste. And she goes on to provide additional details, but she wanted to know if they were covered.
If it's a public service corporation, it is, and the list of public service corporations is available online on the State Corporation Commission's website. I would assume so. If their profits are regulated by the state, not the laws, their direct profits, the way they profit is regulated by the state. It is a public service corporation, and it would be encompassed in this bill.
Great, thank you so much. All right, do we have any other questions for our legislators or our advocates who are on the call? Oh, so Catherine White wants to know, I'm going to open this up to whoever wants to answer it. Is there a chance that we'll be able to expand the session to 45 days? Maybe I'll let Senator McClellan take this one.
Yeah, I can take that. We have been in the House and Senate leadership has been in conversation with the governor's office, and he did indicate publicly that if we are not able to finish our work in 30 days, that he will call a special session to give us the extra, it's actually 16 days. It's supposed to be a 46-day session to allow us to finish our work. We will not get updated budget revenue forecasts until late February. So I'm pretty sure, at least on the budget, we won't be able to finish our work in 30 days. So hopefully we will get everything done as quickly as possible after that, but we're going to take the time we need to do it right.
That's really good to hear. I know we've been under a lot of stress trying to figure out how everything was going to get done in such a short period. So it's great to hear that there are discussions about how to make that happen.
Us too.
I'm sure. We have Frida. Frida, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your procedural question?
Yes, I was just wondering what the rules are when it comes to submitting bills to the legislative services. Is there a deadline where the statutes that are going to be opened and then after that deadline passes, you can't potentially open other statutes? And if so, what is that? And if a bill is amended, can it bring in other statutes, or is that gone at that time?
If no one else wants to, I can answer that one too. Wednesday is the deadline for any bills that are pre-filed to be filed. And then Friday is the deadline for any additional bills to be filed after that. So after Friday, you have to have unanimous consent to introduce anything else. We have what's called a single object rule. And we also have germaneness issues. And so as long as you amend bills consistent with the single object rule so that you're only dealing with one particular issue, even if it's a broad issue, or your amendments are related to the code sections you're amending, you can amend them. But we'll know pretty much the full universe of the bills we have to deal with by Friday.
Great. And there's one other question related to that. Does that include resolutions? The deadline, the Friday deadline?
If it is a commending or memorial resolution, no, they can be introduced pretty much up until the last week of session. If it is a resolution calling on the General Assembly or an agency to do something, that is treated as a bill and is in that deadline.
Great, thank you so much. Sharon Shetler had a question for Senator Boysko. Senator, if you are still on, she was hoping you could talk about one of your other priority bills on energy efficiency and residential building codes.
Hey, this is Kristina. I'm so sorry. Senator Boysko had to hop, but I'm happy to help connect after the call if that's...
No worries at all. I know that Sharon knows a lot about the bill. It's just another one that the Grassroots Coalition is supporting. So she wanted to give her airtime if she was still here.
That's right.
All right. Just wanted to see if there are any other questions before we wrap up the press conference. Oh, general question. What is the best way to support these bills? Lisa, this is a great question. So one of the reasons that we've highlighted particular bills here is because we have people in the Grassroots Coalition who are going to be tracking these bills and sending me calls to action. We'll be working with our legislators, not just on the 6 bills that we highlighted, but we're going to put together a whole priority bills letter, which hopefully will get to our delegates and senators by Monday of next week. Obviously, we're just waiting to get some bill numbers still. And then the goal is to work with them to make sure that we know when they need our support. And we will send out calls to action. Those will either be phone calls, they could be email letters, but we'll work directly with the legislators to figure out the best way to do that. That being said, do any of the legislators who are still on the call want to say something particular about what advocacy strategy do you think tends to be the most effective in terms of, talking to some of the legislators who maybe aren't on this call, but are the ones that we need to be convincing to vote a particular way on some of these bills?
This is Delegate Bagby. I just want to say thank you all for supporting the Clean Cars legislation, and we look forward to getting that across the finish line. A lot of work been done, particularly from LCV and others, and I really want to say thank you all for your support for the legislation.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. We were able to hear more about it from Sharon Shetler. I think she even had your talking points. But we are so pleased that you are sponsoring the bill this year and are looking forward to helping support you in the advocacy around it.
Louisa, to answer the other question,
thank you.
This is Delegate Mark Levine. Emails are quite effective. Phone calls are also quite effective. I think that if you call your own delegate or senator, that's particularly effective. And also check to see who's on the committees that it goes through. So when you see these bills, check the bill. It'll say what committee it's in. Is it a Senate committee? Is it a House committee? Which committee is it? Has it gone in the House to a subcommittee? And probably need to drown those of us in the subcommittee or the committee because we're going to see it first. If I'm on the subcommittee that sees it first, and frankly, by the time a bill reaches the floor, it gets a certain momentum out of subcommittee and committee. So if you're waiting for the floor vote, you may already be a little late. Try to get us early on the subcommittee. And also, I think it's helpful if you just want to say support or oppose, that's fine, that is heard. But if you have some particular reason or insight or a way that it's affected you in a good way or a negative way, I think that's something that's really very useful for us, your personal stories of why this bill matters to you or why you hate this bill, or even better, how we can amend a bill that you find problematic to make it better. That's actually really useful information for us.
Fantastic. And we have
can
another
follow up, Luisa, just to say that as Delegate Levine mentioned, testimonials are so important. And if you could come and testify during the hearing, that is extremely important. That is still happening, even though it's going to be a virtual session. But we wanted you just not to procrastinate like we used to line up before the hearing. So if you can, I think the hearing meetings are already published. So if you can sign up an hour ahead or 2 hours ahead, just to put your name in, we are limited in the amount of time that we can have in these testimonies, which are extremely important. And finally, the two priorities that I share with you today are House Democratic priorities. So we're good in the House. So I'll definitely need your help in the Senate Commerce and Labor, and also in the Senate Transportation, because I know that the senators that are with us today, they are champions of the issues also and are supportive of the issues that we introduce, but we definitely need help on the Senate Commerce and Labor and Senate Transportation for the ID cards for undocumented immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. So we have a couple of questions related to, now that everything is online, how do we both speak at a hearing and give testimony, or just attend a committee meeting? So can somebody share what that process is quickly, if you have that information?
Sure. Yeah, you would sign up online. You'd have to pay attention to the time of the meeting, and there's a sign up form next to the exact time of the meeting that'll come up a few hours before the meeting. It's a little bit of tracking to make sure that you catch the link and you sign up. And you have to be aware of the time of start and the few hours before that you're going to have to go online and sign up. So
one thing you should know we're doing differently this year when it's all virtual is we're having very standardized meeting times, at least in the House. I'm not sure what they're doing in the Senate, but in the House, it's 7 to 9, 9 to 11, 11 to 1, 1 to 3. Subcommittees are 7 to 9 and 11 to 1, and full committees are 9 to 11 and 1 to 3. And when I say those 2 hours, I mean it will not go a minute outside those 2 hours because of video. It might go less than, but it won't go more than. And so know exactly when the committee meetings are, and you must sign up an hour in advance. If you don't, you will not be heard because they're being very strict about time. So you can submit public comments. You certainly can do that. But you're going to want to know when those meetings are and to sign up in advance.
Fantastic.
On the Senate side, all of our meeting times are at their normal schedule. So on the Senate website, you will see the list. But on LIS under meetings, I would check that every day to see. We list out what the meetings are going to be. Usually the agenda is put up at least 24 hours in advance. There's a link to the live stream if you just want to watch. There's a link to where you can go to sign up to testify, and there's usually a link where you can submit written comments because they will be taking written comments. One caveat I would say on the Senate side, because the Pocahontas building is going to be limited in who can be in because of COVID, we are not going to have folks regularly answering the phones all day is not dedicated to doing that. There will be a constituent line where you can call and submit your comment. It'll get forwarded to us, but I would say be a little bit patient. We will have people checking the phones, but it's going to be slower than usual. So I would use email, and again, be patient. I'm expecting email volumes to be double a normal session because so many people can't come in. We are getting them. Just be a little bit patient if it takes longer for us to respond.
Thank you so much. Yeah, setting expectations this year, I think, is very important, seeing as so much is shifting in real time. So appreciate that information. All right, so what I wanted to do is address, there are questions about how to receive the calls to action, the legislative updates. What we'll do is I will make sure to email everyone who has RSVP'd for this meeting. Some of you already receive our emails for the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. You will receive all of the updates through those emails. But for others who either want to join the coalition email list or just only would like to receive the legislative calls to action for this legislative session, those will both be options. And I will send you the information on how to sign up for those after this meeting, and along with the video of the meeting so that you have everything at your fingertips. I think we have information from Robin saying the press conference is going to be live on Facebook, and it's also going to be available on YouTube later today. So I just want to wrap up by saying thank you so much to everybody for participating. As we know, democracy does not happen without people and people's involvement and people's action. And you on the call are our democracy. And so as we've heard from a number of the senators and delegates, we have to keep up the work. We have to keep up the support, and making sure that we are heard during this legislative cycle is just as important as making sure we have the right people in office to be voting on these bills. So thank you to our legislators, thank you to our activists, and thank you to the reporters who were able to join us today. Appreciate it, and have a good, and for those of you in the DC area, safe next week. We have a lot to be paying attention to these days. Thanks so much.